Yeah, hi everyone, and thank you for joining my session. So my topic today is all about moving your reference or configuration data between different environments. So for those who don't know, for you who don't know me, I'm Mary Ann Castro. I'm a senior functional consultant, and I'm currently living here in New Zealand. But I started my Dynamics journey since CRM 4.0, and I've been doing Dynamics work, or now what we call Power Platform, for more than a decade now. So I've started my career back in Singapore. I actually started as a SharePoint consultant, and then I moved into, when I saw Dynamics, it's like, oh, this is a much cooler. I like it more than doing SharePoint. So I asked my boss if I could, do Dynamics instead. And I was given the opportunity, and that made me move into New Zealand, which I am here now working. Now with So my topic today, I'm going to demonstrate different approaches of moving your reference or configuration data. So I will start with, let's take a look at our agenda. So first, let's define why is it important you're maintaining your reference data GUID between environments, and what does that mean? Then I'm going to go through the various ways of moving the configuration data, which tools we can use and for which purposes. And then how do we handle full data transfer and versus patches, like if you're just updating a few records and you're not doing a full build. And with those different ways, which method would be best for you, or what tools can you use for which purpose? So with the reference data, of course, it's quite important to maintain the GUID, especially if you're using those configuration data within your workflows, in Power Automate, even your business rules or JavaScripts. And back in the days where, when I didn't know about it, I would sometimes have to update, those classic workflows back in the day. We don't have Power Automate then. So it's quite a tedious task to do that. And so as much as possible, we need to maintain the reference data GUID between environments. And especially now that we're doing a managed solution, I'm not going to go through that manage. There's a lot of debate around that area. But yeah, especially if you're doing manage, you're not able to update your components within your solution. So it's quite important to keep it as is. Now I'm going to cover 4 ways or tools in moving the configuration data. So first, I'll start with the out-of-the-box data management, how we do the export import. Then I will cover the Microsoft configuration migration tool, how we can use that, and then the Xrem Toolbox data transporter tool, and then how we do that in Devops Pipeline. Now, just a disclaimer, I'm not going to show you, this won't involve showing you how it works in the Devops Pipeline. So I'm just covering the approach. But for the rest of the 3, I'm going to do a demo. In my current project right now, we use the Devops Pipeline to transfer reference data. And so we're actually working with Microsoft MCS in that project, and this is just sharing the approach that we do using the Devops pipeline. Right, cool. So first of all, data management export and import process. So this, most of you who's been working with Dynamics or Power Platform would probably have known this approach already, but I think I sometimes encounter colleagues, people who don't know this approach yet. So I was thinking, oh, maybe this is something that I can share in this session. So let me go and do the demo. So basically what we do here is we export the data from our target environment. We update that Excel spreadsheet to remove some of the columns, but maintain the GUID. And then we import that into the target environment. So that's gonna be what I'm gonna demo now. Right, cool. So I'm just gonna use an example of a country. So I have two environments here. So in my Mac demo environment, I have a list of countries here, which I want to export into my Macverse environment using the out-of-the-box import and export. So what I'll do here is just gonna select all my data and then export, oops, sorry. And then export that. So I will have my active countries. Now, once that open, you will notice that in the spreadsheet that's been exported, you would have the 3 columns hidden here. So if you're doing an update, then in the same environment, you can keep this as is to update a record and then just modify the name and import that back in that same environment. But if we're doing moving this across an environment and we want to keep the GUID as is, what we need to do is delete these 2 columns here. So I'm going to delete that. I don't need this created on either. And then you keep the GUID column here, which will be for country. And then what I can do is I'll then save this as a CSV file. Click OK. And then now I can go to my Macverse environment and do the import. So I'm going to go and import the data. It was faster earlier.
Demo gods are not with you today.
Come on, Lynn, don't jinx it.
Did you not do the sacrifice?
Okay, now it's loaded. This is the one, 1109. Just gonna do automatic mapping, and then I'm gonna go and choose the country. And important thing here is your country column is mapped into the primary key of the same table. And then just gonna go and click next. Submit. So that's done. So this would, well, this would work for, you know, I guess the pros and cons here is you will have to upload each and every Excel spreadsheet that you have by doing this method. So it's not really for large scale implementation. This is something that I don't see myself using. For small scale, then this would work because you wouldn't have a lot of data or reference data to import. But the other tools that I'll be covering later, that will be more suitable for a large scale implementation. Geez, I'm only importing 4 records. Okay, transforming.
Yeah, getting there.
Getting there. Be importing soon.
You said
So,
your session is
okay.
gonna be short. That's why.
The session is short. It's the importing that's gonna take long. Right. So so that's imported 1111. And if we look at let's look at the Australia here. So I've got the GID for Australia 4919, and back in my Macverse, if I go into my Australia here, then I'd get the same GID as well. So that's the approach for the out of the box data, my reference data configuration import. So going back to my PowerPoint, so we've covered the data management export import process. And the next tool that I want to show you guys is the Microsoft configuration migration tool. So I personally haven't used this actually in my implementations because I've been using a different tool, which I will also cover later. But this is what Microsoft have as their tool. So with this configuration migration tool, you can create a schema, and then you can export the data and then import the data as well. So how does this work is, so you connect to your source CRM, you generate, that create schema that will generate the XML schema for your import file as your import file, and then it will ask you to whether you want to just export the schema or include the data with it. And then if you say, okay, I want the data as well, then it will create a data zip file, which you can import later on into your target environment. So let me show you how that works. Just close all these windows. So this is the, sorry guys, this is the configuration migration tool. Now, if you wanna, how you start here is you click create schema if you're exporting the data or creating a schema, but if you're going to import, then you select the import data, which we will do later. So I'm gonna go and click continue, and then this is your login details to your environment. It's weird, it has to have that maximize, what do you call that option here. So once you're connected to your environment, it will load all the solutions available. And then in this instance, I'm just gonna go into the solution I prepared, and it will load all the entities within your solution. So in this case, I only have 3. If you want to, let's say, all your configuration or reference data is in that entity, you can add all, and then that will add all those entities here. Or if you want to be selective, then you can just say, country, and then you can select the country fields that you want to be added in your schema. So I can say add entity or add fields. So in this case, I'm just gonna go and add fields. So if I look into here, I've only selected these 2 fields. Now what I'll do is I can save and export this. But if you have some filtering, you can also do a filter of, let's say, you only want those active records. So you can do that as well. So in this case, I'm just gonna go and these apps. So that just saved the schema file. Now it will ask you if you want to export the data as well. So if you're after the data because you're importing this into another environment, then you say yes. And then it will ask you to which data, just say these apps, how you want to save it to. And then I'll say export the data. So now what it did is it exported the schema and the data, and then I can exit, and your file will then be available. So these two files were created. Now what I can do now is, let's say I'm just gonna use my same Macverse environment. I'm going to delete this because this is the records that we imported earlier using the out of the box. So I'm going to delete that, and I'm just going to import it back. So importing the data, it will ask you to log in again and basically just select the zip file that you did export earlier on. Open and just say import data. So if I go and refresh here, so that would have then created all my records, and it will still contain the same GUID as what we've exported from the last from the last import that we did. So this is it's quite good in terms of if you have a lot of comparing to how we need to, the effort required to export and import using the out of the box. With the configuration migration tool, you can select all the entities that you need, and you can load, once you have the schema, you can load it as well if you need to, let's say you have a new field you've created and you wanted to add that. So in your schema, then you can do the loading again and save that. Or if you want to just selectively select tables, then you can load the schema and then update the schema file. Right, cool. If you guys have any questions, do we do question and answer in the end, Lynn?
Yep. So there will be a question and answer at the end. Whoever have a question, just leave for chat for now. Since Marianne can access, I will just read it out at the end. Or alternatively, you can just unmute yourself at the end of the session and ask the questions.
Yeah, I think I'd like this to be more interactive. So if you guys have any questions, just feel free to unmute yourself and ask me out. Right, cool. So we've covered, let's just go back to, we've covered the first two here now. So the data management and the configuration migration tool. Now what's next is the Xrem data transporter, Xrem Toolbox data transporter tool. This is actually the tool that I've used before when doing my data transfer across environment. And this is, if you guys have not, if you haven't heard Xrem Toolbox before, this is how it looks like, and you can thank me later for introducing this to you. If you load this, I actually like what it says. Let me just, if you load the Xrem Toolbox, it says the ultimate set of tools for Microsoft Dataverse and Dynamics 365, and it is the ultimate set of tools if you're doing configuration, management, data environment management. There's a lot of things you can do with the Xrm Toolbox, and these are the different plugins or tools that you can use, and that is filtered by, you can do data comparison, customization, there are migration tools, portals, so there's a lot of things that you can do. And Lynn actually have a Power Platform blog that he covered all the different tools and what it does. And I quite like this quote by Jonas that says, if you're not working with Xrm Toolbox, you are just working too hard. So yeah, I do recommend checking that tool out. And this is the different Xrm Toolbox tools that Lynn have actually documented. Thank you for that, Lynn. I actually use your blog for the data transporter tool. Yeah. All right, cool.
Thanks for the shout out.
Going back to our demo. So in this instance, I'm gonna go and connect to the data transporter tool. Right, so as you can see, it can, there's a lot of things that you have to set, but don't be overwhelmed. It's actually quite simple. So here you have your source environment, which is, of course, your source. And I can say I'm gonna go and connect to my target environment. So what this tool does is it lets you select any entity that you want or table that you want to transfer data to. So in this case, I'm connected to MacVerse as my source and then my Mac demo as my target, and I just want to export or import the country lists into my Mac demo environment. So what you do is you filter down which entity, and then you can select or unselect the fields that you need from here. And on the settings here, as you notice, you can say, I want to update those records that's already in my target environment. So any changes in your dev environment, and if the record is already in your target, this tool will update it. And also, if there are records that's been deleted in your source and you want to clean up your target, this process will also delete that using this tool. So as you can see in the configuration data configuration tool earlier, we didn't have the option of delete. And later on, how I will explain how we do that using the Devops pipeline. Yeah, so here these are the auto mappings, which is just automatically mapping your root business unit and other things. And process in bulk. So this is, you can specify if you want to process it in bulk, and that just makes it, make your transfer faster. Now over here, so you can refresh entities, association, you can preview the data. So if you want to look at, what are the records and what the tool will do, you can do a preview. So in this case, because in my target environment, I already have those records. So it says, if you do the transfer data, this is the action that the tool will do. So it will say whether it will create, it will update, or it will delete. Now, once you're happy with that, then you can just click transfer data, and then that will transfer all your data. And then now over here, what you see is we have mappings and filters. If I click mappings, this is if you already have, so for example, if for references of, let's say your country, you have in a scenario where, for you want to assign records to a team for specific record that are tagged in a specific country. So, and you already have a team that have, a different GeoID, for example, in your target environment. So you can specify here that for that entity, this is the mapping between your source data and your target data. So it will just pick up. Now in your in filter here, you can use a fetch XMLs. For example, if I only want to include, so this is a XML schema for my country list. And if I say I only want to include all those all those active records, then you can do a filtering here, and then it will then only select those active records. Now there's a tiny button here that says download. So this is actually downloading the schema of this entity. And what you can do here is for each table or entity, you can download all of those schema files. And then when you transfer, you can create a playlist. It sounds kind of cool, playlist, like Spotify playlist. But what this does is you add your configuration. So let's say I'm gonna use my Mac country, and then I have, for example, my team schema. So in that case, it will run this in sequence. So this is, you can say, okay, I want the team to be imported first, especially if you have those dependencies between entities. So, before you can associate your country with the team, you need the team first, for example. So you can say create, update, delete, and then you can do the transfer data here. Yeah, so it's quite good to, it's not going to be as tedious as, doing the out of the box import and export. Although in this scenario, unlike with the data configuration migration tool by Microsoft, you have the full list of schema, but here, you have your per entity configuration. So that's the key difference. All right, cool. So I'm not gonna transfer this, but just showing you guys how that would work. Now, if you notice, we also have an associations tab here, but this is covering, this will load all the many-to-many relationship that you have. So for example, if I go into contact and if I go into association, so I can see that, these are all the different relationships. Why can't I see the list? Refresh association. Oh, because I want to show you guys the marketing list, but because I'm in the Dataverse source, so I'm not able to show you. But this is, for example, if you want to load import a many-to-many relationship data, then this is where you can select the relationship and then do a transfer data. But that you have to make sure that both the end-to-end entities that is linking that many-to-many is already in your target environment. All right, cool. I think that should cover all my. Did I cover everything, Lynn? You're the expert in this.
Yep, all everything. So
All
there's
right.
a question from the audience that's
Yeah.
like, when refreshing environments, is it possible to automate transferring of data between environments, like refreshing from prod to UAT?
Yeah, so that you're talking about the transactional data, you're not the reference data.
It's not quite mentioned
But
on the
yeah.
question. VDMT. If you can unmute yourself and ask the question, it will be better.
Sorry, I guess for both.
Yeah, for both. Yeah, so this, are you particular on which tool or doesn't matter?
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, so for example, in the this Xrem Toolbox, so it's not, you can select basically any entity, any table. So it doesn't have to be, transactional reference data. So for example, here, I'm selecting a contact record. So for example, if you want to move your accounts or contact record from your source, from your dev to UAT, you can do that here. I would suggest, and if you don't want to move everything, then you can do filters. So for example, you might have some flag that for your data, you have a flag of, UAT for UAT purposes. So you can filter those data and only move those selected data into your UAT.
The question is actually around the automation of the transferring the data. So I believe with this tool we can only manually transfer, right?
Yeah, you can do that with Devops. So in the pipeline, if you have, which I will cover after this. So, you have your step-by-step, when you do a deployment, then one of your step could be doing the data refresh. So I'll cover that after this. Right. No more question around this?
No. Let's carry on.
Okay. So yeah, so we've covered the 3 tools now. So what I'll discuss next is the Devops pipeline. So I can't demo this with you guys. I wish I can, but I'm not able. So how we do the reference data update or build in DevOps is we use the configuration migration tool to export the entity schema. And then we use PowerShell to, based on your import schema, we use PowerShell script to import, to export and also import the master data. So in the pipeline, so in terms of automation, this is probably the best way of doing so. So in my current project at the moment, whenever we do a deployment of all the configurations, Power Automates, any components that we did in Dev, of course, there will be changes to your reference data as well. So we have a step to also import the reference data, master data. Now, if you wanted to, as part of the question earlier, if you wanted to include some sample data, you can have another step to do that. So it's basically the same. So you have your XML schema using the configuration migration tool, and then use PowerShell to export and import those data. Now, as you notice in Xrem Toolbox, you have the option of deleting or cleaning up your target data, but in Devops Pipeline, we're not able to do that out of the box. So we actually have a rectify data step and we run an executable to clean up those deleted data from the target environment if that data doesn't exist in or has been deleted in the source environment already. So yeah, so this is how this is the approach that we do in Devops Pipeline. And I think that's the only, those are the only things that I want to share around Devops Pipeline. If you guys have any questions, I might not be able to answer if it's technical, but feel free to ask me and I can go back and get the answer for you guys.
There's one serious question in the chat from
Yeah?
Jensen. When are you going to upgrade your Windows 11?
Maybe after this. Very good question. Very good question. Right. So so this is my last slide. This is handling full data config versus patches. So with full build, as I've mentioned, you can use these different tools. So for configuration migration tool, you will need the full schema. Same for the Xrem Toolbox, so you need your full playlist. And with Devops Pipeline as well, you need your full schema. And then if you're doing patches, so you update, it will be the same step, but you update your schema and just select those tables that you need. And similarly for the Xrem Toolbox, just a subset of your playlist. And for DevOps Pipeline, also a subset of your schema. So I think that concludes my presentation today, guys. I made it 40 minutes, actually. I thought it would only take max 30 minutes, but yeah.
Okay, so Priya Prasad has a question. Which of these tools would you recommend from your experience?
Hi, hello there, Priya. Yeah, yeah, so I think it depends on, I have a story around that. So I think it depends on what tool is available to you and how big or small your implementation is. I quite like using the Xrem Toolbox, because it's, you have the tool, you don't have to set, unlike DevOps, you have to set up DevOps pipeline and all that stuff. But for small, medium size implementation, I think the Xrem Toolbox will be my recommendation. But if you have a really large, implementation where you have, maybe 100 or, reference data, and you always do refresh of that, then the DevOps pipeline is something that I would recommend investing on and setting that up, initially, because once you have that, it's actually quite, it's fast to just, do your build and release, and yeah, it will save you time to do those automations. And for in my experience, because I work at the moment, I'm in a project in a government agency, so we are quite limited to the tools that we can use within the organization. So I'm not actually able to use the Xrm Toolbox. So what I do is, although I can run the Microsoft configuration migration tool, but whenever we have patches, what I use is just the data management export and import. If I only have, maybe like, 10, 20 records to import, and only for those ones that are new that I need to create in the target environment. If we have any updates, or if there's more records, then we do a patch using the DevOps pipeline. So we take the subset of schema and do a release just for those reference data. Did that answer your question, Priya?
Yes, Maria. Thank you.
I'm sure you already know our approach.
Thanks.
So related to that DevOps pipeline story, it's a bit technical, but your technical team set it up. So
yes.
The question from the audience is, how long did it take to configure the DevOps pipeline? So
yeah, that is something that I can't answer right now, but I can ask them. And so if you connect with me on my LinkedIn, just search Marianne Castro and ping me. I can get back to you.
okay, so thanks. We'll paste the LinkedIn profile for Marianne in the chat window.
Yeah, thanks.
So feel free to connect her and ask her. Okay, anyone else have any question? Feel free to unmute and
Suppose no more questions.
yeah, I guess so. There are some clapping emojis flying around.
I can see. But yeah, thank you guys for attending my session. I hope you learned something new. And yeah, enjoy the rest of the sessions. I think we are up to like 5 p.m. today, so do check out the other streams as well for Dynamics 365 and yeah, Power Platform.
Okay, thank you, Marianne. So we can have an early lunch.
Yes, you can have your early lunch. All right, thank you guys. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Marianne.